Welcome to the Explainer. So today, we're diving straight into a really profound, highly structured Eastern spiritual text. In Thai, it's known as Kob Gum Tumras. We're going to completely decode its step-by-step guide to spiritual cultivation. We'll be drawing directly on the teachings of some seriously revered figures, like the holy teacher Ji Gong and the Bodhisattva Guan Yin. And we're going to examine exactly how this ancient Eastern wisdom tackles the very real suffering of our modern world. It's fascinating stuff, so let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for this text. We're looking at a 5-stage journey. 1. The chaos in the raft. 2. Tears of the cultivator. 3. Defining the true sage. 4. Passing the heavenly tests. And finally, number 5. The ultimate spiritual vow. Starting right off with Section 1, The Chaos and the Raft, a World in Need. Let's look at the translated title of our text, Gathering the Nectar of Dharma. Now, the crucial thing to understand here is that in this tradition, Dharma, or spiritual truth, isn't just some abstract, airy concept. It's literally described as a sweet, pure nectar. Think of it as a life-saving cure specifically designed to heal a soul that's been completely battered by the suffering of the physical world. The entire goal for the practitioner is to carefully collect and completely absorb every single drop of this nectar. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful quote right from the text's preface. It says, "Even though our world is filled with evil and danger that constantly undermines life and mind, a miraculous thing appears right before us like a lifeboat." I mean, that perfectly sets up the core tension of the whole text, doesn't it? The world is essentially viewed as this perilous, chaotic ocean, and the Dharma, the spiritual path we're tracing today, is the rescue vessel. It's the literal lifeboat sent by the heavens to pull humanity out of those stormy waters. That moves us into Section 2, Tears of the Cultivator, the Internal Battle. Now, what's really interesting here is this fierce internal duality. It's basically a spiritual tug-of-war. On one side, you've got the worldly mind. This mind is constantly weighed down by emotional turmoil, stubborn attachments, and just being pulled around by habitual desires. But on the flip side, you have the aspiring Buddha mind. And this mind is anchored in profound wisdom, lasting peace, and most importantly, the completely selfless desire to save others. The text actually points out how deeply painful it is for a teacher to watch their disciples struggle between these two mindsets, constantly bouncing back and forth throughout their entire life. It's a real battle. Because that internal battle is so utterly exhausting, the text speaks super intimately, directly to the practitioner. It offers this guidance. Whenever you suffer, do not cry. Transform the mind that suffers into unyielding strength. Transform the tears you shed into a continuous flow of love. It's basically saying, look, failing and hurting, that's just part of the process. But the ultimate test for the cultivator is taking that deep personal pain and alchemizing it into universal compassion. Moving on to Section 3, Defining the True Sage, Virtues in Action. So, I want to pose a question to you, drawn straight from the text. In a modern world that is, let's face it, completely obsessed with ego, outward capability, and climbing the social ladder, what truly makes someone a sage? How does this specific Eastern spiritual philosophy measure greatness? Well, according to the teachings of Guan Yin, a true sage looks vastly different from what we might consider a worldly leader. First off, they are deeply humble, they yield to obstacles just like water does. They aren't looking outward to judge everyone else. Instead, they are constantly reflecting inward on their own morality. They let go of all those attachments to external appearances. They rely on a quiet, profound wisdom rather than arrogant pride. And crucially, they never, ever forget gratitude. In this philosophy, mastery is entirely about extreme humility and internal refinement. It's a systematic stripping away of the ego. To really drive that home, the text states, heaven doesn't just want the capable. Heaven wants the absolutely sincere. True sincerity can turn dirt into gold. That is huge. Absolute sincerity is the foundational pillar of this entire philosophy. All the raw talent, wealth, or towering intellect in the world, it's viewed as completely useless in this framework if you don't have genuine, pure intent. It's that absolute sincerity that acts as the alchemy, transforming just ordinary human effort into something divine. Which brings us to Section 4, Passing the Heavenly Tests, the Rules of Conduct. And this brilliantly illustrates how those internal virtues translate into the real world. The text maps out a really strict interpersonal framework. For parents, you owe gentle, unyielding filial piety. To elders, deep respect and reverence. To juniors, you provide uplifting support. To the masses, it's about boundless mercy and compassion.
And to your heavenly duty, full acceptance and harmony. The key takeaway here is that everyday interactions aren't just seen as having good manners. No, they are literal, constant tests of faith, designed by heaven to actively refine your soul.
And that leads us to our final stage, Section 5, the ultimate spiritual vow, saving sentient beings.
To really grasp the end goal of all this rigorous training, we have to look at a concept the text calls the original infant mind. This is defined as the pure, untainted, inherently perfect state of the soul, exactly as it was before being corrupted by worldly attachments. So, the ultimate goal isn't actually about acquiring some new magical powers or a massive intellect. It's an act of subtraction. The whole point is returning to your purest, most uncorrupted original state.
Once that original mind is realized, the journey takes its final, totally selfless turn. The logical sequence here is very clear. Step 1, transcend your own personal suffering. Step 2, cultivate that original pure mind. But step 3, and this is the absolute most important part, you must dedicate your entire life to saving other sentient beings. Once you're purified, you don't get to just escape to a cave in the mountains. You have to step right back into the messy, chaotic world to act as that very lifeboat we talked about at the beginning.
The text wraps up with this incredibly encouraging vision of shared enlightenment. It says, "Do not let the days pass you by. Nurture the original infant mind. Finally, all disciples will gather to joyfully drink the fragrant nectar together." That brings the whole philosophy right back full circle. The nectar of Dharma isn't something you hoard for yourself. The ultimate reward for enduring all those intense trials of cultivation is a joyful, collective awakening. So that leaves us with a final thought for today. In a philosophy where the ultimate spiritual test requires you to completely let go of your ego and yield like water, how do you navigate your own worldly attachments right now? Are you out there acting as a lifeboat for others, or are you still caught up in the storm yourself? It's definitely a profound question to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the nectar of Dharma has given you a fresh, illuminating perspective. Keep exploring.